Hello, welcome to Mastercast on Digital Theatre Plus with me, Simon Stevens. When I write plays and I'm imagining characters in my mind, I never think of imaginary people or people from real life, people I know. I always think of actors, actors I want to write for, who inspire and spark my thinking. The actor who I think of more than any other is the Irish actor Andrew Scott. One of the great joys of my working life has been to work with Andrew on two plays. I wrote the monologue Seawall for him in 2008, and then he played the lead role in my play Birdland in 2014. But he has appeared in the imaginary cast of about 6 other plays while I'm in the throes of writing them. He's best known perhaps for his television work, Moriarty in Sherlock or the Hot Priest in Fleabag, but I know him best as a stage actor of astonishing poise and musicality and grace. His work with Christopher Shin at the Royal Court, his work on Sarah Kane's Crave broke my heart. He's taken major roles in plays by Brian Friel, David Hare, Eugene O'Neill, Henrik Ibsen. His Gary Essendine in Noel Coward's Present Laughter at the Old Vic was a feat of wit and sadness, and his Hamlet in Rob Icke's brilliant production quite obliterated me. I'm grateful to think of him as a friend and honoured to think of him as a collaborator and to welcome him to Mastercast. Andrew Scott, how are you?
That's Simon. How you doing?
I'm all right, man. I'm all right. I'm having a good day today. I've done my one bit of exercise. I'm feeling good. I went on my bike. Everything's great.
So you've exercised your body, and now you're about to exercise your mind.
Exactly. I always start these conversations by just asking people how they're getting on with lockdown. How are you? How's it going for you?
It's going. Well, I think a little bit like everybody. Sometimes you have 4 seasons in one day, but I'm really determined. In 25 years, when they say, "Oh, do you remember that time?" I don't want to be like, I turned to dust. I want to. I do think it's a sort of extraordinary opportunity. I've definitely learned loads of things, both practically and sort of emotionally, and in a way, being an actor. It sometimes isn't really that different for actors as in lockdown as it is for actors outside of lockdown, because you've just spent so much of your time as an actor when you're unemployed thinking, how am I going to structure my day? How am I going to do this? What am I going to do today? What am I going to do to exercise to keep myself? Because the big problem with being an actor sometimes is not getting to act.
Yeah.
The periods of unemployment. So I think we're used to being at home on Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock more than somebody who may work in an office. So it's all the things, really.
I was going to ask you about that because, as you know, I'm a big football fan, and there's a lot of talk in footballers in lockdown doing all kinds of training regimes and kind of, keeping themselves match fit and ready in case the season comes back. But what do actors do? What do you do when you're not actually in rehearsal? Do you think about kind of staying, match fit, to use that metaphor? Are there routines or rituals you have to try and stay in practice?
Yeah, there definitely are. I feel like it's something I talk about a lot, but it's playfulness. Playfulness is the most important thing. I think you need to be an actor. You play a part. You don't, and I think sometimes we forget as actors that our work is to be playful. And when we're children, we play all the time. You go, okay, right, you be the nurse, and I'm going to be a monster that comes in, and you don't think, okay, right, what's the motivation of this nurse? What is this monster? What's his backstory? You just go, okay, cool. And the further we go into adulthood, the more we're discouraged from being kind of playful. And so having a sort of formal plan about being playful every day, I don't think is necessarily beneficial for me. But the idea of performing, so to speak, is something I think that we do really every day. And there are friends that we have where you can have a very playful relationship with them, where you're just sort of, I don't know, you're kind of talking a lot of nonsense, but it feels very playful. I think sometimes you can have a great performance in your head when you're listening to music. Sometimes I've noticed at the beginning of lockdown when people are like, stay connected. You must FaceTime, you must Zoom, you must blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking, after the first week or so, I was like, I can't find myself in this. And I realized it's because I hadn't had much time for myself to go imaginatively into the thing that I like to do to keep my creativity going, which is a lot of the time for me, like listening to, it could be a musical, something out of a Stephen Sondheim song, or something where your imagination goes, and you think about a part that you might like to play, and you go, and you might be going on the street crying, or just imaginatively going, I'm being creative. It doesn't necessarily have to be formal. I'm doing something every day.
That's so fascinating, and so weirdly akin to, I think, like my own imaginary life, my own capacity. I think I've had this since I was a small child, to really engage with the imaginary world, like to pretend to be in conversations that I'm not actually in.
Yeah,
still have the capacity to make myself cry, just walking down the street thinking about sad stuff. I've never said that out loud to anybody before.
Right. But that's so much of what we do, our inner world, which is like when they say stay connected, and which is very important, when we're put into isolation. But like, you have to stay connected with that part of yourself. If I were to think I'm going to lock him in that room over there, and I'm just going to focus on everything else, there is a thing that you need to do. I think that that is the fertilizer for when you actually are being formally creative, because you can conceive of things, can't you? Like you always do on walks, particularly when walking is, and then later you go, oh yeah, I've been with this feeling before.
I think it's one of the great shames of our lives, which is so defined by social media, is that we can lose the capacity to daydream. Or to wonder about things. When I was using Twitter a lot, whenever I kind of found myself daydreaming or wondering, I would go onto Twitter rather than just allow myself to explore what was going on in my mind. And I think it's that exploration that stories come from, characters come from.
Yeah, and I think it's incredibly creative, because acting is the only art form, I think, one of the only art forms anyway, where you don't see your own work. In theatre. So when you're working in the theatre, your imagination goes so much, and you don't actually have to look at it. If you're a writer, there's something tangible, or a painter, you see your stuff, or even as a film actor, when actors are self-taping and stuff, you have to look at it. And I think sometimes those things, in being formally creative as an actor, it can be. You think, oh my God, I'm very self-conscious. Look at my big face, or whatever is wrong with my voice I don't really like. Whereas in those kind of things, to keep yourself going and to be playful and to go, I'm imaginatively going to kind of go somewhere. It's something I've always believed, which is our ability to be able to laugh and have a good laugh with somebody is a real, to my mind, a real arbiter of what our level of humanity is. Because to be able to laugh and to be able to think this is ridiculous is as much. Those comedians on Instagram or people have made me laugh during this kind of isolated time are the people I think have helped me survive as much as anything.
Yeah. I could talk to you about this for about 3 hours. I had a question for you, which is a really strange question, so forgive me, but I wouldn't necessarily have to ask it to most actors, but I think you might enjoy it. What would you say your job is as an actor? If we're charting the journey from Willie Russell talking to us about where ideas come from, Dennis Kelly and Tanika Gupta talking about how they write. We've got Marianne Elliott, Miranda Cromwell talking about how they stage ideas, and then designers talking about how they design them. What does an actor do? And it could be as stupid a question as it sounds, but it might lead you, I don't know. What would you say the job of an actor is?
Well, it's an interpretive art for a start, and it's no less of an art form because it's interpretive. So for a lot of the time you're interpreting something that you might have conceived of. And my job is to interpret your voice and in some way to sort of get into to sort of learn your choreography in some way and match it with mine and in some way create something newer, so that if your play doesn't fully exist as a play until it's performed, and my performance can't exist without your play. And I like the idea that you're kind of getting into a sort of dance with each other. That's what I think. That's what I think it is. I think that the purpose of any art form, and I include kind of all of them in that, is to help people live a better life. That's what I think it's for. I think it's to make people's lives a little bit better. That you go, oh God, that's really improved my life.
Yes.
It's just life better, oh wow, I feel like, oh, that's something that has improved my life in some way.
So brilliant, and so simple, and absolutely true to what we do.
I hope so. Yeah,
it's really pressing now, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I really, really believe this in relation to stories and what you call essential, or we're talking a lot during lockdown about what's essential in our lives, and the idea of storytelling is so important. We need it. People need to watch television or listen to music or play, watch a movie, and just so that we can escape some of the heaviness that we feel. But even storytelling in relation to, what have you heard? Oh, well, I've heard that we're going to be in lockdown for 4 weeks, and I've heard this, and apparently there's a person who works in a hospital. We sort of lean into stories as human beings so often. And when stories are not reliable, as we sort of find in the news and something like that, now we're going, oh God, I don't know whether to believe that, because is that a fake news source or whatever? So the lie that tells the truth, which is drama and acting and all that kind of stuff, is the one that you go, you feel, okay, well, this is all made up anyway.
I love that, the lie that tells the truth.
Yeah,
that's really beautiful. I'm fascinated. A lot of the people watching this will be people who are 16, maybe 17. Some of them perhaps thinking about acting. I think you'd be an inspiring person for anybody to hear talk about acting. I'm interested in how you got started, what you were doing when you were 16, 17, and how you went from being that position to starting working as an actor. Did you train? No,
not formally. I went to drama classes when I was a kid. I was very, very, very shy. And I had a lisp when I was a kid. I sort of, all my S's were wrong. And so I started off going to elocution lessons when I was sort of like, she sells seashells on the seashore. I was also really, really shy. Like, didn't speak a lot in public. I was quite chatty at home. So I went to these drama classes, and I used to be like nervous, like terrified. These drama classes for like 4 o'clock on a Saturday, not professional, like youth theatre, so to speak. And something happened in those classes where, even though I was terrified, I just felt like when I was up there, I felt like, oh, this is okay. I can sort of escape it a little bit. And then I continued to do that, and you put on little plays and stuff. And then when I was about 16 or so, I started to do kind of these drama competitions. I was introduced to Shakespeare a little bit by a very good drama teacher, and I didn't feel like it was a sort of serious, boring subject, and I kind of loved it in some way because the way I was taught, and sometimes the way we're taught about acting and Shakespeare and things like that can be a little skew-whiffed to my mind. And then when I was 17, a film director in Ireland came to these drama classes to look for a young person to be in his film, and it was a small Irish independent film, and I went and I made that. It was a great part, and as a result I got a job in the Abbey Theatre in Dublin when I was 18 or 19. So then I worked at the Abbey for a couple of years and did a bit of films, and I got an agent and that kind of stuff. And then when I was 22, I came over to the Royal Court, where we met, and so I've sort of been going there. So I've never had any professional training. I learned it all really just by making mistakes and looking around me.
Do you ever think that? Did you ever consider that to be like a loss, or do you ever wish that you had trained in any way, or are you happy to have?
I'm delighted. I can say that I really, really consider it a great thing that I didn't train. I know that it can really work for people, but I think it goes back to that playful thing that I talk about. I feel like all the other stuff you can learn. You can learn other stuff. You can in a big theater know, oh God, I am not supporting my breath, because there are techniques that I can employ to hit the back of the theater, or certain technical things that I do think that you can learn. But that idea of playfulness, and that idea of not being competitive with other actors, and it being just a great joy to do, I feel quite grateful that I didn't train. And so for the people who are watching, I think it's to sort of to develop a real strong sense. I think what people really want from actors is they want to know, who is this person? And sometimes the worst kind of acting that we don't like seeing is when it's a bit, nearly bad acting is nearly better than kind of acting.
What do you mean by that? I really like that. Well, unpack that a little bit. What do you mean by that?
Well, I suppose that I mean that there's I think kind of bad acting is where you have no idea who this person is, and they don't really either. So right. I think sometimes we think that acting is pretending to be somebody else. And I think that acting is about revealing who you are through somebody else's writing. So I get a character that you've written, and I think, well, how would I be if I was a rock star? How would I be coupled with the sort of rhythms of this person? But it's still me, because of course the characters that you write don't actually exist. I mean that in the best way.
Yeah.
They don't. People say, "Who is Hamlet?" And I think, well, Hamlet is this, and I think, well, Hamlet has never existed, so in order to make him sort of properly manifested, I have to go, well, it has to come from me. It has to come from me. And so if I attempt to do something that somebody else has done, it can be effective, but I don't think it has a unique autograph to it, which I think all art should sort of have.
That's really beautiful. And incredibly clear. You had a little face there. It was like, does that make sense? About the clearest thing that anybody said to me about acting.
Yes.
Do you? I'm interested because I'm trying to follow like an imaginary play that together Willie Russell, Tanika Gupta, and Dennis Kelly are writing, and Marianne and Miranda are going to direct, and Paulie and Ian Dickinson and Bunny are going to design, and then you're going to be one of the actors. I'm just making that up in my head now. I'm interested in what you do when you get sent a script. Do you have a process which repeats itself, or is it entirely arbitrary? Do you have a kind of, do you have somewhere you go to read, for example? Do you have like a room in your house where you like reading, or a time of day you like reading? Do you have a kind of a routine for reading?
No, I don't. I have to tell you the truth. I'm not good at reading scripts, because I'm terrified that they're going to be bad. Because a lot of scripts are bad.
Yeah.
Don't have what you have, which is a complete authorial voice, and that's what you want in any script. What I would look, if I were to answer your question, say what I look for is something that usually you can see in the first 3 pages, where you think, oh wow, this has just got its own musicality, or just something that I haven't really seen before. That voice is just sort of like a unique piece of music. You go, I've never heard that kind of music before. I sort of know that from the beginning. And that's, I think, one of the things that I would look for. They say, there was a brilliant way of putting it, somebody put it, that choosing the part is like listening to loads of songs on the radio, and then just one comes on and makes you want to dance. I think it's beautiful. You just go. It's not like that. You don't like, oh my god, I hate that song. You just go, this song just makes me do something. And different scripts do that for different people.
You can't lie about that. You can't
can't lie, exactly. It's almost involuntary. And I really, for the people who are watching this, I think I've become a bit more trusting of what my own instinct is. I think what happens a lot of the time with acting is people tell you, "Oh, this is the kind of person that you are. This is what you're going to be. This is the kind of work that I think you'll probably go into." People have a lot of opinions, and so to be able to learn to trust your own instinct about things and what you're good at, and to more than anything be willing to make a fool out of yourself, to really make mistakes. There's a slight tyranny at the moment, I believe, which is goes against the idea of which is about surety, that you must know things. And I actually think in order to have any sort of artistic breakthrough, you have to start with the idea of I don't know. And if you don't know, you have to be able to go, is it this? No, it's not that. And like I know a lot of actors will in rehearsal and everything go, oh God, no. You know, there is stuff that you do is embarrassing, but that means you go, okay, well then it's not that.
Yeah.
So, but if you're not willing to make a fool out of yourself, then I don't think you can discover something new.
I believe that more strongly than I believe most things. Yeah. And when I talk to young people all the time, young writers or people who want to act or make art, one of the things that I repeat all the time is in life we learn nothing from success. But success teaches us nothing at all. We raise a generation of young people to fear failure and to hanker for success when success teaches us nothing. And the only way we learn is by failing if we're unafraid of failure and we can look it in the face and go, what happened there? That's how all scientific breakthrough happens, all artistic breakthrough happens.
In fact, I really go as far as to say that sometimes success is dangerous.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that.
And so, you know, like that. What I'll tell you, what happens when you've achieved a certain modicum of success. I think the reason it's dangerous is that life to me is about learning. If you stop learning something, to me, you stop living. So if you're successful, and people go, I love what you did there, my God, that's amazing, and you made a bit of money out of that, and now you're more successful, so to speak, as an actor. The biggest challenge, I think, that you have to be quite ferocious of it, that I find now at the moment, is going, no, I don't know that. Don't assume that I know everything. Because what I want to do is to now, once you're good at something, is to go, okay, what else can't I do?
Yeah.
I hope that I can continue to do that until I'm 82. I worked with Anthony Hopkins last year. I think I told you this, and he was so exciting, and because he was such a huge influence on me. What was so exciting to see about him was that he was like, I don't know, what is it? What is it? It's this. Even with this sort of childlike enthusiasm, which I suppose I'm talking about in relation to training and playfulness and all that kind of stuff. That's what you've got to kind of hold on to, which success can kind of can sort of sneakily steal from you. And it's like the Picasso thing of I've what did he say? I've waited my whole life to paint like a child. You know, he tried his whole life to paint like a child, and I think there's something like that. Even if it's really serious work,
especially if it's really serious.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you once you've made your choice on a role, once you've committed to it, whether that's Gary Assadine or Paul in Birdland or Hamlet or any of those roles, before rehearsals start, are there things that you like to do? Are there routines that you enjoy or preparation that you have that you would return to before the first day of rehearsal?
I think for me, the script is sacred. I don't think you can make a great film or a great production of a play without great writing. I think writing is really important. And sometimes they talk about not knowing the script particularly well as a kind of virtue in some sense. That you go, well, if you learn it too much before you start rehearsing, you might learn a particular rhythm. And I don't really agree with that. I think sometimes we mistake memory exercise, learning something for rehearsal. And if you know it pretty well, it actually allows you to be much more playful because you can take much more risks. Because you go blah, blah, blah. It's like when you know something, you can be just incredibly playful again. Sometimes when actors are doing line runs, when you go, come on, we'll just run the lines for for memory exercise, often that's where it's at its most light and it sort of soars because you're not thinking, oh my God, what is the next line? What's the next line? And you sort of disguise that by thinking, I'm searching for, and it can get you more stressed, but actually what it is learning the lines. So that really, and only that, is my preparation. Other than that, I feel like once you have that as a baseline, then I kind of feel like that your job is to sort of jump blindfold off a cliff. And then, yeah.
What are the for you, if there was a young director watching this, there was a young kind of 19-year-old aspiring director, what would you advise her or him would be the most important characteristics for a good rehearsal room? What makes a good rehearsal room for you?
What a great question. I think it's to be enabling. A great director, Rob Icke, said to me once, he said, it's okay to argue, but argue in a rehearsal room as allies, not as enemies. And I think that's a beautiful way of saying it, which is, that you can argue, but try and remember that you're on the same team and you're both wanting the same thing, rather than it being sort of properly combative. I think it's to remember as well that to be enabling and to give everybody a chance to speak, to know that everybody is nervous and that certain actors may need something and another person may need completely the opposite in order to get where they are. But more than anything, it goes back to that playfulness. It's to keep it light. Keep it light in as much as you can, and I don't mean that in the sense that because sometimes you're dealing with very heavy subjects, but sometimes over talking a subject, talking about the play, I think can make it a little heavy, and actually doing the play, acting it out and doing it in completely different ways, and then talking a little bit and then taking that energy, I think is a very good use of the time. And so often rehearsal rooms are about time management.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about Rob, who is, I agree, Rob Icke is one of the great directors in Britain at the moment. And his production of Hamlet, which he directed and which he played Hamlet. It's a slim small role. How on earth do you bring a quality of play to a role as complex and dark and destructive and self-destructive as Hamlet? Because when I watched that what struck me was the light of your performance and the humanity of it. But were you frightened of playing Hamlet?
Oh, so frightened. I really, genuinely, for years, as you know, I worked at the Royal Court for years, lots of other places. Most of my work, not exclusively, but mostly, was in new writing. And I thought, I'm not really a Shakespeare kind of actor because I don't sort of have a terribly sort of posh voice, blah, blah, blah. Because the way we sort of have inherited Shakespeare is a sort of, I don't know, like acting for posh people? I don't really know. That's not really for me.
Which is the opposite of what he was, of course. Like,
totally opposite of what he was. He's totally opposite of what he was. And that's not to say that some posh people aren't extremely good at playing Shakespeare. But I just thought that it wasn't for me because I didn't see very many people like that, and me playing those parts. But I always thought, oh yeah, I'd really like to play that part because I think it speaks to me in some way. So Rob and I were talking about a couple of different plays that we might do, and we started talking about that. And he's so brilliant on Shakespeare. And actually, I think, to give you an example, at the beginning, I thought I have to say when something is written, Y-E-A-H, I think my instinct would have, do I have to say yay? And he'd say, no, he says, yeah. He's saying, yeah. Why are you put it? No.
It's not yay. Who says yay?
What Shakespeare used to say was like, the way we say, it isn't there instead of it is not there. He used to say, okay, he'd say "on't" instead of "on it," because in the time he was living, that was a way of colloquializing the word to say instead of saying "on it," he'd say "on't." But what's happened is that's been taken, and there are 250 books written on how you should speak it, and so now people say "on." And so you think you have to speak it in some extraordinary sort of way, which you really don't. And when I realized that actually you still had to adhere to the language and the rhythm, but you have to try. It's much more modern than you think. I often say this, and I use you as an example. I said, if there were 250 books written on how to speak your plays, I feel like your plays would suffocate. Don't you think? 250. No, I think what he means there is this. Dot, 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 dot. So why, in the most actable writer nearly of all time, why are we so burdened by the way it should be? It's been taken, I think, from practitioners, by academics, so to speak. So I found it the most actable part I've ever played. And just to say about the lightness about that, there is no tragedy in Hamlet if there isn't lightness. There's no real tragedy to him dying if he was miserable in his life anyway. If he was just going around thinking, then actually he'd be delighted if he died. So actually this is somebody who loves life. He's incredibly funny. It's such a funny play, Hamlet. He's a student. He's in love. His mother has married his uncle 2 months after his dad has died. It's not particularly... I'd be moody as well. Because the play is so famous, you think, oh, you're playing the moody day, and I see, and you have to wear dark clothes and blah, 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 and you whatever. So it's to sort of try and unfamous the play. We had a thing in rehearsal called the famous play buzzer, which is like, you don't know that the ghost of his dad isn't going to come back and be a main character for the whole play. We don't know. So you have to understand the I don't know-ness. Goes back to the I don't know-ness again, of the story, and to be or not to be is what his dilemma is. I don't know. And acting to me is the art of pretending that you don't know what you're going to say next when you do. Do you know what I'm saying?
So brilliant. Yeah, completely. And it's the art. And
just know the lines, or you don't.
It's the art of writing as well. It's the same thing in writing. You need to be able to write a line which somehow inexorably leads from the last line, but you kind of both knew that it was going to and could never have anticipated. Right. It's gorgeous hearing an actor.
So when you're writing, then who is your first audience? I mean, like, who do you think about?
I think what I write, because I tend to take commissions. I tend to write for specific theatres.
Yeah.
And I tend to write the play that I wish somebody else had written for that theatre so that I could go and watch it.
Yeah.
And it's normally theatres that I love. And I'm a big theatre fan. That's one of the things that is hardest for me about lockdown is I just miss the theatre.
Yeah.
I miss the assembly of people.
Of course, yeah.
I miss kind of sitting next to somebody I might not even like.
Yeah.
And then something makes us both laugh.
Yeah.
And we're bonded in that moment, or something makes us both cry, and we cry unapologetically in front of one another.
Yeah. Together.
So, I'm kind of like, I write for myself, but not for myself in isolation from the theatre. I write for myself in a specific and particular theatre. That can't be possible for an actor because actors can't see themselves watching their own performance. So who do you act for?
It's such a good question. I think probably my mom.
Oh man!
Well, she's the first person I acted for. When I was a kid, I was going to a film, but she'd go da da da. And no, not really. But it's interesting that you about the people when you every night. I think what people don't realize, even as an audience member, you forget it, even being in the theatre, is how much the actors backstage are obsessed with the audience. Did you see that guy in the third? Did you see that guy in the third row? They're quite laughing. They didn't really laugh so much as this. I thought they were quite quiet, but then they were listeners. People are always talking about them every single night because it's so fascinating that exactly the same words and exactly the same sort of prototype of play of experience can change immeasurably between a matinee at 2:30 and 7:30 that evening. It's extraordinary. And it's because of this community of energies that come come into a room, and that's alive, particularly when something like Seawall, where the audience almost, which is this play that you and I did together,
Yeah.
which was almost a kind of communion with the audience, because it was just one man talking, and so in that one we actually went further. I suppose we had the lights up, didn't we? And so I was talking directly to the audience. So in fact, not only did I have a sense of the audience, I actually knew what they were wearing and who was, if that was a mother or daughter, or if they were on their own, or if I knew them, or whatever. And so I'm very interested in that breaking down of the kind of formalities of what a live experience is. I'm talking to a lot of drama students at the moment during the lockdown period, and I keep talking about the idea of playfulness and the idea of when somebody forgets their lines in the theatre. When you go, and there's that moment that we've all think, oh my God, there is no, as we know, more pure sense of silence and attention than when somebody forgets their lines. It's like, please remember, and that's because it's completely live. The people are like, oh my God, this is happening now. This didn't happen last night. This didn't happen at the matinee. This is looking at the performance that I am now at, and I'm hoping and it's a completely thing. So actually, it's to try and engage with that sense of, oh my God, it's to try and like ramp up the imagination of the audience so much that they feel that they are there, and that is about it's kind of about unlearning, and that's about. It starts with the writing, and then it's like just pretending that you don't know it. I don't know. It's such a. That's not a very articulate way of saying it.
I think there's a great articulacy to it. You're one of the things that I love working. One of the many reasons that I love working with you is, of all the actors I know, you seem to cherish the rhythm of language.
Yeah.
And my favourite actors seem to get. I love the idea of you dancing with the play. I think and music seems so important to you.
Yeah.
As somebody who's not trained, so you weren't voice trained, presumably you didn't have, lecture after lecture on iambic pentameter.
Oh, no, still what that is.
Are you able to be cognitive, to talk about how you use language, or is it just something that's intuitive for you?
Yeah, in the sense that I think this requires a little bit of that. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, complete sense.
Yeah, or you go like, maybe it's a da-da-da-da-da. And I think like the idea of pausing, I mean, we could talk about pausing for 2 hours with no pauses. But like the idea of so often our speed of thought, I think sometimes a real death of, I think sometimes performing can be a little headed on it. It means that you earn the pauses so that when somebody does stop, you think, oh God, I have to listen to this. Whereas if everything is weighed with the same import.
Yeah.
And I think you start to sort of lose the story. And that's what I do think that what sometimes bad acting is when you think, quite with Shakespeare, sometimes you don't necessarily catch all the words, but you catch the rhythm of what they're saying. And I think that's a nice way of thinking about it. You think, oh, if I'm not looking at that, what does it sound like?
It's the English. I think it's a very specifically English idea, and I think English is the only language where the word for the assembly of people who gather together to plays, we are an audience. Isn't that great?
My kind. Audience.
Yeah, exactly. I went I love making Seawall with you, and every iteration of that production is one of the highlights of my working life. I saw it one night with the choreographer Wayne McGregor, who's a brilliant, the chief choreographer of the Royal Ballet. Weirdly, I was at but a remarkable man, incredible brain. And he talked about your performance, and he said you were dancing all the time. And this is a performance of people who haven't seen it. Fundamentally, it's one person who we recognise from the street, or extreme or remarkable. He's not like Paul from Birdland, who is a rock star. Alex is a working photographer. He's a normal guy. But Wayne said every moment. And so if I could ask the same question, not about your language, but about your body, do you have cognitive control of what you're doing with your body? I think that would be the reason why I couldn't act. Anybody watching these conversations will just see me. Do you know what your body's doing when you're acting?
No, and I'm very, very glad that I don't. They put Hamlet on television, and I had to physically leave the house. I watched the first 10 minutes. I thought, okay, what were they? And I thought, no. And not only could I not just turn off the television and just stay and just do something else, I literally had to go walk for 3 hours until it was over because I was so everything. So I do think there's something about that. I mean, of course, that was an extreme physicality. Yeah, I do feel I see the physicality of words a lot. I adore, as you say, I adore words. I would think that requires a sort of this punching or something. Mm. Interestingly, in another play that we did, Birdland, I actually had to or whatever. Excuse me.
Were you in Greece? Were you in Greece?
I was in Greece. Yeah, I was just one of the,
Were you Danny or Kaniki?
I wasn't either. I was just. And then same production that I had to play Bernardo in West Side Story, which is slightly weird casting. But anyway, whatever. There wasn't much of a choice in Dublin. Ability to embody was sort of confirmed that for me. Like said, oh, you can't dance. So for ages I'd thought, and Anya, who's the choreographer on it, about dancing, and I was like, oh no, that's not something. And so then we went into a room, the choreographer and I, and we did some freestyle dancing to music about how we songs and it's sort of reductive. So how do you make him like a rock star? And so we did this thing, and I was able to sort of freestyle, and she was, and I was like, oh, what, really? And I found it one of the most thrilling things that I've ever physically, I suppose, confident about being confident physically about. And I do think that's got something to do with, to anybody who's starting acting, I think one's comfort with oneself is a very important attribute that you can develop. I think just going, people want to see you. They don't want to see you disappearing altogether. I think that's a great myth about acting. Yeah. So the more comfortable you are with I love the expression that we contain multitudes. And if we contain multitudes, it means that you can play multitudes. So you've got to go, well, maybe I am a dancer, even though I don't feel like one. Maybe I am to be vulnerable enough to say, I'm gonna do this. So yeah.
And that audacity is best kindled from that spirit of
be your own parent in some way. Go on, you do it. It just doesn't matter. Go on, have it. And then this brilliant thing on a podcast that I just want to talk about, because I think it's such a brilliant, beautiful thing that I only heard the other week. It was by this man called Mo Gawdat, who's coronavirus and how we survive it. And he was talking with the brilliant Elizabeth Day on her podcast, How to Fail. I strongly recommend this man. And he was talking about his son, who was an excellent video gamer. And I'd never really thought about video gaming very much. About 20 years ago, I think. And so his legacy for his father has been to take what his attitude towards many things, but one of them being video gaming. And he used to play video games with his son. And he used to try, Mo himself used to try and get to the end as safely as he could, and then he would win the game. And he used to say to his son, like, why are you going into that level? It's crazy. It's crazy. Like, what are you? He goes, Dad, in order to be a really good gamer, you have to go into the places that are actually going to be really hard to get through that level. You're going to be, and actually you go, game over, and you got to go back to the beginning. But actually, to live a brilliant life, the idea is not to get there safely as possible to the end. The idea is to play the video game to go, well, I went there. And oh my God, now we are in lockdown. You have to be in the lockdown phase. You can't go, oh, I wish I was in a different level of the video game. You have to get really good at the lockdown level. Do you know what I mean? And I thought it was such a beautiful way of describing life, but also our artistic life. That actually, you got to make the mistakes. You got to go, oh, I wasn't good at that. And do you know what? Now I'm a little bit better.
Andrew Scott, thank you very,
You're so welcome.
very much. That was absolutely beautiful.
Oh, my pleasure. So lovely to see you, my friend. I hope to see you in the sunshine with a little beer in our hands soon.
I hope so too, man. So I thought this week I'd try and give you an acting exercise based on my conversation with Andrew. I hope you found it as inspiring as I have to say I really did. And I developed this thinking about what he was talking about when he talked about speed and the energy and the musicality of speed and performance. And this is something that I suggest you try yourselves. Take a speech in a play that you know and you love, and learn the speech. That's important. I was really surprised, actually, and rather taken by his insistence that actors should learn their lines before they start work. So take a speech that you know, a speech that you love, and learn it. And then get your timer on your phone and start the speech with a 5-minute time so that you go as slow as you need to in order so that the last word of the speech is said as the timer runs out. And then do it again for 4 minutes. And then do it again for 3 minutes, and then do it again for 2 minutes, and then do it again for 1 minute, and then do it again for 30 seconds. And see what you learn about the musicality and the energy of the speech from doing that. And if you're enjoying yourself and you want to carry on, why don't you do this? Why don't you take 2 pieces of music that you love? It could be, like Andrew talked about, it could be a piece of rap music, or it could be a Beethoven sonata. It could be any piece of music from any form. And play the music and do the speech to coincide absolutely with the rhythms of the music. And then do it with the second contrasting piece of music. See what you learn. It could be embarrassing. It could be a total failure. And I can't help thinking that if it is, then you're acting like Andrew Scott. Be fearless. Have a great deal of fun.